At first, it doesn't look like a mistake. It looks like what every history book promised you: a wall of men, steel, and courage rolling toward a coastline that had been turned into a fortress. The sea is rough, the sky is heavy, the horizon is crowded with ships, and the morning feels like the beginning of a legend. But the truth is, legends don't show you the seconds where plans start to break. On D-Day, the breaking didn't begin with a dramatic speech or a single bullet. It began with something quieter, something so normal that most people never label it as lethal. And that's why it stayed invisible in the popular story for so long. Not because somebody locked it away in a vault, not because of some movie-style conspiracy, but because it's harder to accept a simple human chain reaction than it is to celebrate pure heroism. Here's the hook that will twist your stomach by the time this ends. Some of the heaviest losses on that beach didn't happen because the enemy was stronger. They happened because the beach itself turned into a trap, because of one assumption that sounded harmless until the moment it met reality. And once it started, it multiplied. You already know the big headline: June 6, 1944, the day the Allies finally slammed into occupied Europe, the day the long wait ended, the day Hitler's Atlantic Wall met the largest amphibious operation in human history, the day that had to work, because if it failed, the war stretches, the death toll explodes, and the world that follows looks unrecognizable. The plan, on paper, is almost perfect. Landing craft arrive in waves, infantry hits first, engineers clear obstacles and open lanes, tanks support, naval gunfire suppresses defenses, air support disrupts reinforcements, units push off the sand, take the high ground, and the beach becomes a supply artery instead of a slaughterhouse. Everything is timed, everything is sequenced, everything is measured in minutes, and that's the first place your brain needs to pause, because war doesn't respect schedules. War respects physics. And on that morning, physics was waiting. A landing only works if the shoreline behaves like a doorway. Men come in, move through, and get out. It's a simple idea: a flow, an exit, forward motion. But on D-Day, especially on the hardest stretches of coast, what the plan needed was a doorway. And what it actually got was a funnel. A funnel under machine gun fire doesn't just slow you down, it compresses bodies, it stacks fear. It turns movement into waiting. And waiting on open sand is how courage becomes casualties. Most people talk about D-Day like the beach was a single moment: ramps dropping, men charging, explosions everywhere, then victory. That's the version designed to fit in a neat narrative. The real version is uglier and more frightening. It's dozens of tiny failures and near failures happening at the same time, all feeding into one another until the whole coastline starts behaving like a clogged artery. Let's bring you into it, not as a historian reading numbers, but as a human being standing inside a landing craft with your stomach turning. The engine rattles, salt water sprays through gaps. You're pressed shoulder to shoulder with men who suddenly feel like your entire universe. Somebody is gripping a photograph so hard, the edges are bending. Somebody keeps whispering the same sentence like a charm. Somebody else is silent because if he speaks, his voice will reveal what he's trying to hide. You can't see the beach clearly. Smoke hangs in the air like a curtain. The sea is rough enough that stepping off the ramp isn't just stepping forward, it's stepping into uncertainty. Your gear isn't just gear, it's weight. And weight in water is unforgiving. You've been trained for this, but training can't fully simulate one thing. The moment the ramp drops and reality hits you at once, sound, smell, spray, screams, metal, bullets snapping through water with a crack you will never forget. Here's where the myth breaks. In the myth, the landing is a clean forward surge. In reality, the landing is a puzzle with missing pieces. Currents pull craft sideways. Smoke hides landmarks. Waves scatter timing. Some boats land too far left or right. Some hit sandbars or deeper water than expected. Some ramps drop into water higher than anyone planned for. Units that were meant to arrive together arrive fragmented, mixed, disoriented, and already behind the schedule that was supposed to keep them alive. And now, the first invisible killer appears. Confusion isn't just mental. It becomes physical. Because when men don't know where they are, they hesitate. When officers can't find the right exit points, they bunch up. When engineers can't reach obstacles on time, lanes don't open. When smoke blocks visibility, the beach becomes a maze with no signs. And the moment people bunch up on a beach under fire, you've created the true nightmare of amphibious warfare, a traffic jam at the waterline. This is the mistake most people don't say out loud because it sounds too ordinary to be deadly. A traffic jam, like a city street. But on a beach, under guns, a traffic jam becomes a kill zone. Why? Because a beach doesn't have endless cover. It has scattered, cruel little scraps of protection. Metal obstacles, craters, bits of debris, shallow dips in sand. The smallest ridges that can hide a body if you press your face down hard enough. When too many men fight for the same scraps of cover, movement stops. When movement stops, the enemy doesn't even need to win in the cinematic sense. They just need to keep you pinned long enough for the next wave to arrive into the same trap. And that's exactly what happened in the most terrifying feedback loop of D-Day. The plan didn't pause when the beach clogged. The ocean kept delivering men. You have to understand what that feels like. The first wave hits. It's chaos, but there's still hope. Hope that the next minutes will open lanes, clear obstacles, push forward. Then the second wave comes in and finds the first wave still stuck. Now you have more bodies trying to occupy the same deadly strip of sand. More wounded, more equipment, more radios failing, more medics crawling, more men trying to drag friends who are already slipping away. And because the schedule is still running, more craft keep coming. It's like watching a machine continue to feed itself into a grinder because nobody can reach the stop button. This is the moment that should make your chest feel tight. There are parts of D-Day where the deadliest place wasn't the cliff. It wasn't the bunker. It was the space between the surf and the first line of cover. Because that's where the funnel tightens. That's where men step off ramps and discover water deeper than expected, burdened by packs, ammunition, tools, sometimes explosives, sometimes the heavy, awkward gear that seemed reasonable during training and becomes a drowning sentence in real waves. Some men never fire a shot, not because they weren't brave, because they never make it to the sand standing upright. Now think about what that does to everyone behind them. A man collapses in the surf. Another tries to lift him. A third grabs both. A fourth stumbles over the pile. The landing craft behind is still unloading because it has no other choice. The ramp is down. The sea is pushing. The bullets are snapping. The beach is not a stable platform. It's a moving, violent environment. Suddenly, the landing is not advance. It's don't drown. Don't freeze. Don't stop. Don't look down. And then you get the most haunting thing caught in any war footage. The freeze. You can see it if you look for it. Men pinned, shoulders hunched, eyes wide, pressed into sand behind whatever little protection exists. They're not running. They're not charging. They're not even moving much. They're waiting for the world to make sense again. But the world doesn't pause, so your mind can catch up. Bullets keep coming. Waves keep slamming. Orders get swallowed by wind. Radios crackle and die. Smoke makes the landscape feel unreal. A man screams for a medic. Another screams for his mother. Someone is praying. Someone is silent and shaking. Someone tries to stand and gets cut down before he takes 3 steps. So what happens to the perfect plan at that point? It stops being a plan. It becomes a collection of tiny decisions made by whoever is still standing. This is the part that is both horrifying and deeply human. When command and communication collapse, the battle doesn't end. It breaks into islands. A sergeant with 5 men becomes his own army. An engineer with a bag of tools becomes the difference between a blocked beach and an open lane. A medic crawling through fire becomes the only reason someone gets to see tomorrow. And here's the brutal truth. This is where D-Day was actually saved, not by flawless execution, but by messy improvisation that cost blood. Because once the funnel forms, there are only 2 outcomes. Either you stay pinned until you bleed out, or you break the funnel by force. Breaking it means movement. Movement means exposure. Exposure means loss. But without movement, the beach kills you slowly anyway. So men move. They move in small bursts. They move in fragments. They move by instinct, by leadership, by rage, by survival. Sometimes they move because someone ahead of them stands up and, without a speech, makes a choice that shames everyone else into action. And that moment, when a few men finally start pushing past the jam, is the real turning point you rarely feel in the simple version of D-Day. Because it's not cinematic, it's not neat, it's a handful of exhausted humans refusing to die where the plan left them. Now, here's where the hidden part becomes truly uncomfortable. Why didn't the popular story focus on the funnel mistake? Because it forces a darker conversation. It forces us to admit that some deaths were caused not only by enemy fire, but by timing problems, navigation drift, smoke confusion, tide realities, equipment limitations, and the cold fact that you can't land thousands of men onto a narrow strip under heavy fire without creating a jam unless everything goes perfectly. And nothing goes perfectly. The enemy did their job. They defended, they fired, they used the terrain. But the part that stings is this: even when courage is unlimited, the environment can still turn your bravery into a pileup. And that's why the mistake feels hidden. Because it's not heroic to say, the beach became a funnel and men got stuck. It sounds too simple. But war is often that simple and that cruel. Now let's talk about what the funnel does next, because the funnel doesn't just kill bodies, it kills the mind. Imagine lying behind a low ridge of sand or a metal obstacle, hearing landing craft engines behind you, hearing ramps drop, hearing new men arrive into the same nightmare. You realize the beach is filling. You realize the wounded have nowhere to go. You realize the ocean behind you isn't safety, it's more chaos. And then you notice something that changes your entire concept of the battle. Some men can't even crawl backward because there are bodies and gear and crates and obstacles and wounded stacked behind them. The beach isn't just a battlefield, it's a locked room. And in locked rooms, panic spreads faster than orders. This is the moment where the official story and the personal truth split apart. Officially, the assault is continuing. Personally, for many men on the sand, it feels like the world is ending and nobody is coming to fix it. So what fixes it? Not magic, not destiny. A brutal, improvised correction. Small groups begin seeking any exit off the beach, gaps in wire, low points in terrain, routes that weren't part of the original clean diagram. Engineers crawl forward, doing work that looks boring on paper and becomes legendary in reality. Naval fire supports closer. Men drag Bangalore torpedoes, cutters, explosives, anything that can open a pathway through obstacles. Communication slowly rebuilds, not through perfect radio networks, but through runners, shouted words, hand signals, and raw instinct. The funnel begins to loosen. Not because the beach becomes safe, because humans force it to. And as soon as the funnel loosens, the entire battle changes. The enemy positions that felt invincible when the beach was jammed become vulnerable when attackers can finally spread out, flank, climb, and pressure from multiple angles instead of pouring into one narrow killing strip. That's the real lesson. The enemy wasn't only a wall of guns, the enemy was the jam. Once the jam breaks, the beach stops being a trap and becomes what the plan always wanted, a passage. But now we need to talk about the cost, because that's where this story becomes something that actually hits you in the chest instead of just sounding interesting. The cost is not only the number of dead. The cost is the way men remember that morning. Because even when the landing succeeds, the memory doesn't become clean. It becomes a blur of screaming, salt, smoke, and the sight of friends collapsing in surf where a human body looks suddenly fragile and small. It becomes the weight of stepping over someone you trained with because you can't stop. It becomes the guilt of living when the man beside you didn't. It becomes the sound of bullets hitting water, a sound that follows some survivors for the rest of their lives in quiet moments when they try to sleep. And that's why the mistake stayed unspoken in the way people expect. Not because it was forbidden to mention, because survivors often didn't want to reopen the worst part. The part where they felt trapped, the part where the plan seemed to fail, the part where the beach looked like it might swallow them all. So the story that gets repeated becomes cleaner. Courage, victory, liberation, all true, but missing the ugly mechanical truth that the camera hints at. A plan built on flow met a beach that turned into a funnel, and the funnel created a jam, and the jam created death at a scale that feels unreal. Now, here's the twist that makes this story genuinely powerful, and not just another facts video. If you're honest, this isn't only a what if story. It's a story about how humans survive when systems collapse, because the mistake wasn't simply bad planning. It was believing that you can control chaos if you measure it precisely enough, believing that the world will behave like your diagram if you schedule it tightly enough. D-Day succeeded because people stopped trusting the diagram when it was clearly killing them. They improvised, they adapted, they broke the jam. That is the terrifying beauty of it. The landing wasn't saved by perfection, it was saved by imperfection, by human flexibility under fire, by small leaders emerging in hell, by the refusal to stay pinned. And that's why this topic is so gripping, even if you've watched 100 documentaries. Because you start realizing something. The most dangerous moments in history often aren't the famous speeches or the dramatic flags. They're the silent seconds where a situation starts turning wrong and nobody can stop it quickly enough. The seconds where a beach becomes a funnel. The seconds where a funnel becomes a jam. The seconds where a jam becomes a massacre. And if you want a final image to carry into the end of this video, something that feels like a punch rather than a summary, hold on to this. A man steps off a ramp expecting sand. He finds deep water. His gear drags him. He fights for air. Around him, others are doing the same. Behind him, another ramp is dropping. Another wave is arriving. The schedule continues. The ocean doesn't care. The bullets don't care. The beach doesn't care. But somewhere in that hell, someone stands up, points forward, and moves. Not because it's safe, because it's the only way to make the beach stop being a trap. That's the D-Day story most people don't feel when they hear the headline. Not victory, not glory. A warning written in salt water and smoke. If you treat chaos like a doorway, it will become a funnel. And if you don't break the funnel, it will break you. So when you watch those scenes again, when you see bodies pressed into sand, when you see craft still arriving into smoke, when you see men stuck at the waterline, don't only think heroism. Think about the invisible mechanics that almost turned the greatest assault in history into a catastrophe. And then think about the kind of courage it takes to fix a mistake while bullets are still flying. Because that courage is the reason the day didn't end on the beach. It pushed off the sand, climbed into the unknown, and opened the road that led to everything that followed. If you want the next chapter, the moments inside the German defenses when they realized it wasn't a raid, it was the beginning of the end, stay here. Because the most chilling truths aren't always hidden in secret documents. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight, inside the seconds everyone watches but almost nobody truly understands.